So here's the graphical staircase problem. They give you the width of each step and the height of the first, or I'm sorry, like the second step, and that is also the amount that the third step is increased by. So this number here, 15, is the height of this red square. 30 is the height of the light pink square, and then 45 is the height of the blue square, and so on as you move up. And so what is this problem all about? How do you get it done? Well, in order to continue making our rectangles across the screen, we need a loop. And so now the question is for loop or while loop? And we know that for loops are where we know exactly the number of iterations. And we do know the number of iterations here, but who wants to count these rectangles, right? So let's use while loop, because of course in our program we could take our step width and change that to 3, and then that would change the number of rectangles that are on the screen, right? Which means the number of iterations needs to be needs to change depending on the step width. So another reason to make it a while loop. Okay. And so now the question is what should the condition for the while loop be? Well, if you look here, what this program and what this problem is all about, it's about counting variables. And it's like there's 4 different counting variables that you need to keep track of. Okay. If you look at this, what do we need to keep track of? Well, we don't need to keep track of the color, because the color is random, so we just need to make a call to randomizer next color. We need to keep track of the position of each of these rectangles, right? The first iteration of the while loop will put down this first rectangle of height 0. The second iteration will put down this next rectangle of height 15, and we will continue as we move on down. So you could see here that the x position is first, it's here, and then the x position is here, and then the x position is here. So the x position is going to be incrementing as we iterate through our while loop. So that's one thing that we need to keep track of. And also you could see here that the y position is also incrementing, right? The first iteration, the y position should be here. The next iteration, the y position should be here, then here, then here. So that also is incrementing at a regular rate, right? By, I think it's step height. And so that's also going to be a counter that's starting at 0 and counting by step height. And let's see, is there anything else? Okay, and also the height of the rectangles are also counting, right? They're starting at 0, then it's moving on to step height, and then it's moving on to step height times 2, step height times 3, step height. So we're adding step height on each rectangle's height as we move our way down, as we iterate through our while loop. So that's 3 counting variables. So of course we're going to make all of our counting variables at the start of our program. So we're going to say var xpos, and of course we need to initialize it to a value. And then we say var ypos, and we need to initialize that to a value. Var height, initialize that guy to a value. And I think that's about it, right? So now we're thinking about the x position. What should we set that to? Well, you could be thinking my first rectangle is here, so my x position should be at step height, right, on the x position. That's one way to think about it. The way I like to think about it is the first rectangle starts here at 0, right, and the height is 0. So I'm going to go ahead and start my x position at 0 and my y position at the bottom of the screen, right? So at the bottom of the screen is going to be get width, and then we have the height of the first rectangle, which is going to be 0. And I could of course see the rationale for setting this to step width, right? Initializing xpos to step width and starting the loop with the second rectangle, and then the height of course would be step height, right? But I don't know, I guess the computer scientist in me wants to start the variables out at 0. And so and if you know, remember, like computer scientists, we always start counting at 0. So what is this while loop? What's the condition going to be for this while loop to end? Well, the while loop should end there's different ways you could do it, but the way that makes the most sense to me is when the x position gets to be greater than the width of the screen, right? Because the x position is going to be here, then here, it's going to keep moving to the right, and then when it gets to the rightmost rectangle, it's going to increment and move off the screen. And when that happens, the x position is greater than the width, get width. So I'm going to say right here, xpos is greater while xpos is less than get width. Right, so while it's less than get width, let's keep on iterating and keep on putting down rectangles. And so what needs to happen here? Well, we need to put down first rectangle, which is going to be of height 0, right? And of width, step width. So it's not going to put down anything, but it will give us that space there. And then what do we need to do? Then we need to increment all of our accounting variables, right? We need to increment xpos, we need to increment ypos, and then we need to increment height. Okay, and so incrementing the xpos is pretty simple. We just need to increment by the width, right? Because the steps are moving over by width. Incrementing the height is pretty simple too, because we just need to add step height on every iteration to the height variable, right? Now, incrementing ypos is, I'm going to put increment in double quotes because we're not really incrementing ypos. If you notice here, ypos starts at get height, and then it decrements to this position here, right? And what is that position? It's get height minus the step height, right? So ypos is decreasing in value by step height, and so that's why I put increment in double quotes, because we're not really incrementing, because we're incrementing ypos by a negative value, and when you do that, it's not called incrementing, it's called decrementing, right? So we're decrementing ypos by step height. Okay. Yeah, and if you do that, then the next time it iterates through the while loop, this is going to be true, and it's going to put down the second rectangle at that changed xpos and ypos, change the height, and then come down. This is going to be true. It's going to put down the third rectangle, and so on. And so that's basically how you get this done.